Welcome everyone to Rising Out of the Chrysalis Stories That Inspire with Marissa Grace, where we share life stories of struggle and triumph, not only of my own life experiences, but also through the experiences of my own guests, as a way to help you have breakthroughs and find hope in your own life. Welcome, everyone. I want to welcome to the show today, Chrissy Caitlin. Welcome, Chrissy.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. It's a joy to have you on the show. Now, Chrissy, I know you have a very interesting story. So I want to start off by if you could tell us a little bit about your childhood and what was that like as far as you could remember um, and your natural memory of your recollection of the childhood experiences that you had.
I could take you back to my very first memory, and that was being held in the arms of a loved one, a grandmother or my mother, I'm unsure, but a feminine presence, and looking out of the window of the home family I was born to. And my first thought was, I'm in the wrong place, because the land didn't resonate in a high vibration. The land looked, to my eyes, my thought was, it's not well, and a lot of clearing of land. I grew up on a farm, so a lot of clearing of land had happened. A lot of salt was starting to come up in the whole countryside around us. It wasn't well, I don't think, and a lot of farmers needed to use a lot of fertilizers and chemicals in order to be able to grow their crops properly. So, I mean, that's happening all over the world, but I vibrationally could feel that. And that was my very first thought. And then from there, childhood for me was really felt like an invisible minefield. I'd been abused. I grew up in sort of a gentle home, but left with my grandfather at times, which was just, I was the middle child, and that's how it worked. My younger one home with my mother, and my older one, it's my oldest sibling at school. I was the one who got dropped a pot when Dad went and played sport and was sexually abused. And worse than the deeds that were done in that period of time was what he actually told me in order to keep me quiet. That sent me on a journey of hypervigilance, completely being triggered, kind of lost, completely lost. I had sensitive physical sensitivities, and problems that continually appeared in my health. I deeply knew something was kind of wrong, and I thought naturally children always think there's something wrong with them, but nothing felt like, I felt like I was walking around in a world that I couldn't connect with. Like, it was the weirdest thing for a child to grow up, and those memories I'd suppressed of those awful times until I was in my late 20s. So that journey from a childhood into adolescence, and adolescence was even more disruptive and confusing. And I've been a teenager as, something to work through all by itself. But I went to boarding school, and this invisible minefield, as I would call it, played out in my life, where I'm continually triggered. I'm very uncomfortable with who I am. There's feelings of not understanding why I don't fit in. Just always a lostness, always a deep feeling of uncomfortable with my body, uncomfortable with the world around me, not safe, and the need to try and always get things right, I think, to play it safe.
Were you like a perfectionist at school or even at home, like a people
I think
pleaser?
yes and no. Perfectionism, I've got a little OCD in keeping everything neat and tidy, so that's come with me. But I think holding on to beauty, so I think for me, the thing I held on to was beauty, making my environment feel beautiful was very important to me. So rather than it needing to be perfect for the sake of tidiness, the sort of perfectionism was born because energetically, if things had a place, things then felt more beautiful to me and felt more aligned. So it was my way of keeping, in a way, my energy high whilst I lived with this confusion within myself. So beauty has been big in my life. Yeah.
Now, I want to go back to what you said about when your first memory of being held and not feeling like you belonged in the space. Now, I remember I had an experience maybe about 6 years old where even though, my family was familiar to me, I remember neighbors and looking at them, and they look like foreign, like almost like alien beings. Distinctly remember looking at them and like these individuals felt like aliens to me. There was, again, that disconnection between me and, the adults around me. But it was almost the feeling of, like I'm in a strange planet right now. And I don't, I'm trying to kind of wrap my head around how humans look and how they behave, and they all look strange to me.
Well, that's
And
very
and I had
interesting.
yeah, I had the feeling like I don't really belong here or I'm from here and and I think most of my life I've been like that where I'm just fascinated by humans and different personalities and how amazing that each individual is so different.
Mm-hmm.
But the feeling that you had, did you have the feeling that you belonged on this planet, or are you just in the wrong place?
I
Or
I think the sense was that I was in the wrong place because the land was sick. So the vibration was very low, and I don't think my soul, well, I know my soul isn't, again, this whole beauty is about vibrational energy and being born into an environment where the vibrational energy is low. And that was in some way less about the people and more about the environment. And yet, when I was 6 years old, I went on a weekend with a young friend of mine from school and her parents to this wonderful, wonderful town with undulating trees and the most beautiful sort of forests and ferns and water. And I believe it has 3 ley lines, energy lines running through the property we stayed on for the weekend. And I felt like I had found a place on this earth that made sense to my being. Energetically, it was so high. When I got home, my father years later told me that we were discussing this place called Bridgetown, and he said that I spoke about it for about a good 6 months every day after being there. So for me, the vibrational energy of environments and people now, but environments are very important to me.
wow. So tell me, as you grew older, how did that experience of the trauma affect you and relationship as you started navigate, as an
Mm.
adolescent, becoming an adult? How did that affect you as you tried to get into a relationship or as the years went by?
Yeah. Well, it affected everything, every aspect of my life. It, like if you look at a fine cobweb going out into, and if you liken that from your sort of center out into existence, it affects everything. Relationships, I was desperate to be loved, and I was really desperate to be saved, because when I was a child, I understand now that I wanted my grandfather and I, because he always used to say the devil got into us. And if you're not careful, the devil will come back. So I always wanted to be saved from this darkness that had happened, this terror. So that played out in not the best relationships, because if you're looking for the white knight on the shining horse, then you're not necessarily choosing someone who's playing that archetype isn't necessarily grown within themselves. So it filtered out in that way. It filtered out definitely in everything I did was never enough. And even in my early 20s, I ran a very high-end event business and staged some incredible things for a lot of international high-end clients. And each show nothing was ever enough. And I look back and think, my goodness, if I'd experienced the joy of what I'd created, even a little bit, I would have felt like my life had meaning, and this creating beauty would have felt purposeful in my life. So everything I felt detached from, or I was attracting the wrong relationships, or the perpetrator. For those of us who have been abused, we attract, it is a choice to either, I think, take the role of the perpetrator, or to take the role, sort of being more the light bearer, if you like them to. And so attracting other perpetrators, people who harm you or like to keep you small when you start to up-level your life and grow and heal. I've had numerous of those, probably more than most, who have come along into my lifetime, until I started to see those patterns and realized that I had to make some very clear decisions around friendships and relationships, and who I was choosing to share my life and time with. But that took decades of learning. That wasn't a quick aha moment, say in my 20s. That's come about in my 50s. So yes, those
Well,
levels of
it's a journey
awareness.
for sure.
Yeah, it's like breaking through darkness almost when you grow through life. I think the thing to always remember is, and there's been a lot of moments where energetically I've felt so painfully shut down within myself that I've wondered if living like this is worth it. And that has come from generally the impact of the negativity of others that I've taken on board as myself, wearing the reflection of others rather than realizing that's them. We were speaking about this earlier, how others can affect us greatly, and we believe that about ourselves because we still somewhat lost in the darkness and the limiting beliefs and patterns of behavior that our subconscious mind holds us in.
Absolutely. And we tend to, attract what we feel inside. So if we feel that darkness within us, the unworthiness, that we are not deserving, and all these negative self talks and things that we say and believe about ourselves, we attract individuals that are going to reinforce those beliefs
100%.
and amplify them.
Absolutely.
For me
So,
was the depression and having my husband and going through the depression, and kind of for me to be able to see, oh my goodness, it's just a reflection of my own depression that I'm struggling with.
I think now, looking back, as we were discussing when we first met, if one actually continues to believe that life is more, there is this deep knowing within yourself that there is more and you are worthy of so much more, and finding a way to break free of your limiting thoughts, feelings, beliefs, patterns of behavior is available to, well, you and I are both living examples that that is possible. And, I implore people not to give up, because through all of my years, I've tried, I couldn't count how many modalities, from the traditional, the integrative, the experiential, something quite new in out there, to the shamanic, in order to find my way to my healing and to be able to sit here and do the work which is helping others now on find their way. That is available to why I would implore people not to give up.
Absolutely. And I think we all have those moments where we want to give up. And I think that's natural. That doesn't mean we're actually going to carry out the actions, but those thoughts do always come through. Where is it worth it? It's so much suffering that we go through, and the heaviness of carrying it and not knowing how to break free of it, kind of brings us to those points, those days, those moments where we just want to give up. But if we could
Absolutely.
just hang on, because we all have them. We are always gonna have those moments where it's just it becomes unbearable, right? But it's finding that hope, that knowing that you don't have to be this way forever. You can break free. And for you, that time did end up showing up for you. So tell us about how you ended up breaking free from all this baggage that you were carrying and, bringing you down. Tell us a little bit about that.
Thanks, Marissa. That came at my hitting rock bottom more than I'd had some very large spinal surgery that was physically healed, but I still lived in a pain body. I understand the neuroscience behind how pain messages from the physical self can ignite old pain memories, because they're fired in the same areas of we've got 5 areas in our brain that receive pain messages, and they're no different from physical, emotional, mental, are all received in the same places. So it reignited old pain messages. So then I got caught in a terrible pain loop and spent years of, years, 2.5 years of living in very chronic pain, like morphine patch, couldn't sit down to eat my dinner, kind of couldn't sit down, trying to sell a business, my father getting sick and dying, just a number of accumulative things. And then when we did sort of finally get released and sell a little of my business, even though that created loss, which was hard to live with or forgive myself about, because we don't work hard to lose things. We work hard to try and build things for ourselves in our lifetime. So there's a lot going on, and then we packed up, sold our home and moved interstate. So by the time I got to the place interstate, I was completely burnt out. That was my pivotal time. I decided in that space, I mean, I could have laid there and just watched trash television and not continued to believe that life was more, but I chose that as an opportunity. I owned that space. Yes, things had happened to me, but in some way I got myself to where I was. I know that's hard to hear when you don't feel great about yourself, but owning some part of that was invaluable to me. And I started looking for other means of climbing out of that space of healing myself, which came in the likes of a lot of meditation through, say, the likes of Dr. Joe Dispenza's work, listening more to, from the Greg Bradens and Bruce Liptons and the learned sort of mindset leaders, and about how we can create our own reality here on earth. And through doing a few Mind Valley courses, I came across Marissa Peer, who is the founder of Rapid Transformational Therapy, and did a really small course of hers that was really the only thing I could afford to do. And through that course, profound change, and I mean deep, deep change started to happen for me that I'd never been able to create. Plus I was meditating every day for a few hours, morning and night, and having incredible energetic experiences in my body. So I had some RTT, Rapid Transformational Therapy, that created massive life-changing results for me physically and emotionally, mentally. And physically, I got to a point where my body was starting to reject all sorts of foods that were normally okay for me to eat. My sensitivities were through the roof. So I had got to a place where I was even fearful of what I'd be able to eat. And so there was a lot of hypervigilance just around that part of my daily life. So things were friggin' locked down. RTT was my pivot, and I went from being able to shift rapidly over a couple of sessions on various issues to starting to really feel vital again. I mean, I had to put some weight back on my body and had to start using my body properly again because I'd had so much sort of muscle wastage. But really this vitality started to return, and I'd really retrained my brain, or retrained more like it, my mind, that it then encourages new neural pathways to be built too. So you're doing multiple things are happening on different levels, to shift into a new place of being. And from that time on, I decided to train in this incredible modality because I wanted to be able to help others shift from those incredibly limiting places so they too could be free to trust and love themselves and live a more heart-centered way, leaning into their potential. So
That's amazing that you're able to overcome all that pain and all of that fear and trapped emotions that you've been struggling with for so long. So tell us exactly what you do. How do you help clients right now?
okay, well, I use rapid transformational therapy, which you use too, don't you,
Yes.
Marissa? So it's a combination of hypnosis as the inroad to the subconscious mind. It's really safe. You still have free will in this space. So hypnosis, and then within our sort of large toolkit, we've learnt various methods that use psychotherapy, which is a lot of informing the mind and changing the mind's language and beliefs. So a way of upgrading the mind. There's also some cognitive behavioral therapy in that space and neuro-linguistic programming. So it is a wonderful package of sort of tools that we can work with. I also bring in a few elements of other work. So I use the intersection of intuitive, somatic, and liberatory practices that I've gleaned over my lifetime of healing. The main one is using my intuition as I listen and guide clients, I find is incredibly important. So the tools we have been given sort of follow a very defined path of do this, this, and this with rapid transformational therapy. And I use a lot of those, but I also blend when I'm hearing what's happening for a client or asking them about a felt experience, especially in their body. Somatically, we work in a session to clear those feelings as well, because they're often trapped, frozen trauma. So they're getting both a somatic healing, an upgrade of the mind. And I work, when I say liberatory practices, I work with people's imagination. So I might take you, because the mind uses images so beautifully, let's say to clear something, I might invite you after we've understood the root cause, we've up-leveled the mind, and helping up-level the mind might be saying, using, now I want you to go take yourself to the most beautiful place. No one else is there. Might be the beach, might be a beautiful place in the forest, somewhere that is tranquil and yours. And use that space where they can let go even more of the past. They can merge the many parts of themselves in that space. So it's like it is inviting the mind to remember the most beautiful positive is available to them through this way of working with the imagination.
It's absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, and so the
You say
journey
that.
is
Yeah.
that part is, I think, very helpful, because the mind for our listeners works by takes in information by the words we tell it and the images we give it. So I think empowering clients through both auditory and language and the power of imagination brings incredible results for people.
Absolutely. That is amazing work that you're doing, Chrissy. Now, how can someone reach out to you? Where can they find you?
Okay, well, that's very kind. I have a website, and my business name is called Access Your Own Healing. So if you look up accessyourownhealing.com, it's all one word.com, you'll be able to connect with me through my website. And then what we do is we just have a hello, I think a complimentary call to see if this work aligns for you, and I can ascertain if I'm the best person to help you. I have certain colleagues who work in slightly different ways that I do, or with a very specific area of help that you might need that I can refer you to. So that's a really nice way of just saying hello. That's completely complimentary. And that way it's also nice if we begin work, we've already had a way of introducing ourselves to one another, and I can answer all your questions and discuss fees and go from there.
For coming on and sharing the story. I know it could be difficult sometimes to share these very intimate personal stories. I really appreciate your braveness to come on and sharing these things with others in the hope to help someone. So thank you so much for joining. Please like, share, and subscribe so we can have more of these stories for you. So until next time.